Welcome back to the Early Weigh-In podcast. UFC is treating us to another nice set of fights. On Wednesday morning, we have a welterweight showdown between top 10 contenders Michael Chiesa and Neil Magny. But before I hand it over, man, 2-2 in the contest, clawed your way back. That's Fortuna's first round KO over Todorovic. Real tough fight to call, man.
Yes, sir. This Wednesday we're getting a nice lineup of, I think, 14
Yeah.
fights. Last weekend we didn't finish where we wanted to. We started off the year -3 units. We did have a really good read on the main event between Max Holloway and Calvin Kattar. I mean, Max went out there and showed that there is absolutely levels to
Yes.
this game.
Yeah, man, it feels so good when we have a read like that for him to deliver the way he did.
It's almost hard to say that we lost. Like, I know we didn't
Yeah.
finish positive, but lets us know that we know what we're talking about whenever something like that happens.
Absolutely, man. Knock on wood, but we are 3-0 on our max plays now with Whitaker, Wonderboy, and now Max Holloway. So
Okay,
when,
yeah,
when we get those reads, man, I like that we go in all in on them.
100%.
But yeah, man, Wednesday morning's fights started early at 8 a.m. and kicking us off in the women's flyweight division is Victoria Leonardo, who is 8-2, fighting Modafferi, who is 5-1. Opened as a pick'em there, since a lot of people started doing some tape studies and stuff, man, they've stormed Feyru or Feyro, however you pronounce that, up to a 2-1 favorite, man. She's a -200, and I don't want to say rightfully so, but I do think she's a more talented girl over here. Both these girls making their UFC debut, kind of adding some life to that flyweight division. Kind of a grappler versus striker approach here. You got Leonardo who wants us to get this fight on the mat, where Feyru is longtime karate, fighter. She's got 7 amateur fights as well to go with her 5-1 record. It's basically whoever can implement their game plan on each other.
Yeah, so you talked about how the opening line has kind of shifted more towards Manon's favor.
Mm-hmm.
I do think rightfully so. Whenever I did some tape study over both these girls, I definitely lean towards Manon. I think for a girl, she's especially athletic.
Mm-hmm.
She can deliver punches and bunches really, really fast. She's a southpaw, and you're right, she does like to keep it standing. I know in her last three fights, all in 2021, she had finishes, and you're not seeing that, especially on lower level girl fights.
Right.
So coming into this one, I do think that the momentum's in her realm or in her on her side. Victoria, she's coming to us off that contender series where she went into that matchup as a +300. The UFC definitely didn't expect her to win, and she did what she had to by going out there and taking her to the ground and kind of sapping her energy before she could implement her game plan. There are a couple of like big red flags for me with Victoria. And I looked to her first fight in 2020 against Erin Blanchfield, who was 4-1 at the time and was able to head kick knock her out.
Yeah.
Hopefully, she's addressed that problem of dropping that right hand. I know in her last fight against Chelsea Hackett, that's something I did notice her capitalizing on is making sure that she has that hand right back up as soon as she was done throwing her combinations.
Yeah, man, she's definitely, I've seen improvements in her as well. And, two of her losses there being to Miranda Maverick, who's a legit prospect now in the
Mhm.
UFC. And you talked about, some of those names like Liz Tracy and Aaron Blanchfield. They've kind of been some stepping stones for a lot of girls when you look at those records. And that loss to Aaron Blanchfield, man, she gassed bad before she got hit with
Mhm.
that head kick. And that is a red flag, man. It's a big red flag and makes me more lean toward Maynoon's side. This girl's been striking a whole lot for her whole life. She bounces around way more. I think Leonardo's a little bit flat-footed, and I think some of those shots up the middle and that push kick she likes to use will find success. But like most girl fights, I definitely think it sees the judges' scorecards. But I lean toward Magny here, probably with this decision.
Yeah, so I wouldn't be surprised if Manoon did actually get the finish here, especially in those later
Yeah.
rounds. Something about Victoria is that she has that like almost judoku frame. Like she kind of has the same traps as like Rousey did or Kayla Harrison, and that's something that does kind of worry me in this fight. She does try and get it to the ground. I do think physically she's going to be a little bit more um, uh, sound
Mm-hmm.
than Manoon. So that's my only worry, although. Like we both already said, Manon is our pick. I think that's a relatively easy one for us.
Yeah, man, absolutely. At opening odds, pick 'em, I might have played Magny, but complete pass for me at this point.
I understand. Moving on to the bantamweight division, we have Umar Nurmagomedov, who is 12-0, versus Sergey Morozov, who is 16-3. Finally,
Uh,
after three straight canceled events for Umar, we are finally getting to see the Russian prodigy in the UFC. Everybody knows him because of his last name, but we'll finally get to test his last name to the UFC levels of competition. And then Sergey, really getting counted out by the
yeah.
odds makers here. He's sitting at a plus 400 right now
Mhm.
and open at a plus 450. They're not giving him a chance, but from what I can tell, Sergey is no slouch.
Yeah, man, I'm right there with you. I don't think these odds should really exist in MMA, especially when one punch can change the whole situation, you know. But you're right, man. It's a long-awaited debut of a guy who a lot of people are super high on. This guy's got a combat sambo world champion, um, and compared to a lot of people with that last name, you know, this guy's pretty skilled on the feet. You know, you definitely see him throwing a lot more techniques than you do Khabib out there, especially in the kicking realm.
Much more of a Zabit
Yeah,
Dagestani Russian than a
than
Khabib
than Khabib
Dagestan.
for sure, absolutely. But like you said, that long-awaited debut is due to a couple injuries and illnesses this guy's had. So at 5'8", you know, he's got good size for this class, and he's going to have a good little size advantage over Sergey here, who's coming in on a five-fight win streak as the M1 champ. And I think we both agree that M1 championships produce some pretty good fighters.
100%.
This guy, you know, he hasn't fought in 2020 either, so I think he's going to have equally as amount as rust. Man, you look through this guy's record. He's fought some tough guys. You know, one of his last loss in 2018 to Evloev. You know, I feel like he's more basic in the striking. He likes his boxing more than you see Umar, though more variety of techniques.
Hmm.
But I can't help but think, man, if this does get to the mat, that Umar's going to be a little bit better in the size. It's going to help him. But they're definitely counting Sergey out here.
Yeah, so something that I like noting about Sergey is that he did drop a year earlier a fight to Josh Reddinghouse, and then he rematches him a year
Right.
later and is able to get that unanimous decision victory. At least that we know at 31 years old, he's adding those tools to his game to, further improve his all-around game. Umar, one thing to note is he's only been doing this professionally for 5 years. He's coming off of a year layoff, and that's substantial, especially for 25 years old. I imagine that he has the same like stoic approach to fighting that Khabib does. I can't imagine that the lights of being in the UFC is going to affect him too much. I do think that he is the A side in this fight, and I do think that although they both kind of rely on their wrestling pressure to implement their game
Mm-hmm.
plan, that Nurmagomedov has much better top pressure, is able to hold and control people on the ground much better than Sergey can. So I imagine this is going to be on the feet for as long as Sergey can handle it, and then we'll start to see him desperation shoot.
Yeah, man. M1, we do like the talent that it produces, but there's one thing that you gotta mention when you talk about that, and it's that they fight in a ring, and
Hmm.
not in a cage. And for a guy that is gonna probably be defending a lot of takedowns up against the cage, you see AKA they live off the takedowns up against the cage and
Hmm.
stuff, and it's something else that is going to be relatively new to him and stuff. So definitely getting counted out. I don't even think I'm going to parlay Umar anywhere here, and even maybe a small play if it stays above the plus 400 mark on Morozov there. But I
Just
do
off of principle,
right
right?
off of principle, yeah, absolutely, because one punch can change this. We've seen the Abdullah Carr or something I forgot, get submitted by David
Hmm.
Zawada and stuff. So stuff happens, man, and it might be worth a little dabble, a couple point units, there
But
for
just
Morozov.
something to note, I don't know very many people in the 135-pound division that would be even 2-1, 3-1 favorites over Sergey. Now we're looking at a debutant in Umar, and man, they just put a lot of stock in this guy, you
Yeah.
know? And like you said, it's made it almost unplayable from a parlay side on the Nurmagomedov side to, you almost think that Sergey doesn't even stand a chance. So are we wasting money even making a small dabble on this? I don't know. It's something that, like you said, we'll figure it out. But with the Kazakhstani people right now, I mean, they're taking over the UFC, and he's training with some legit
Right.
talent in Kazakhstan with Damir Ismagulov or Tamir Ulanbekov. I mean, he's got some good people to get some looks in and day out. So uh, has the experience advantage over Umar, and I don't know. It's tough to completely count somebody out like the odds makers are right here.
I'm with you, man. Our third fight takes place in the lightweight division. We have Mike Beast Boy Davis, who's 8-2, taking on Mason Dragon Jones, who's 10-0. Man, man, minus 300 opening odds for Mike Davis. We've seen the public steamroll Mason Jones there and bring it down currently to a minus 175 on Mike Davis, and they come back at a plus 155 for Mason Jones. A little bit of recency bias, I guess you can say, from Mike Davis's performance there against Thomas Gifford in Tampa. I know we got to watch that live, and man, that was a fucking beat down from hell, you know?
Absolutely demolished them. We kind of use that as a gauge. Whenever we know somebody got their complete ass whooped, we say that they got Thomas Gifford because of
Right.
this fight.
We do, man. And Mike Davis, he trains out of Fusion XL, so you know he's there with Ronaldo Souza, with Fiorot, and Mike Perry when he decides to show up. He's been scheduled with Giga a couple times this year and had to pull out due to some injuries and stuff. So we haven't seen him all in 2020, but man, 3 fights against, you know, UFC talent. We saw him in his his contender series with Yusuf, Sadiq Yusuf, where Mike Davis entered that as a minus 300 favorite, man. And that was something crazy because, he didn't walk away with the win there
No, and Sadiq Yusuf has really made a name for himself in the UFC.
right? And then you get your short notice debut against Gilbert Burns, which is a tough, task for anybody. And then the short notice fight against Thomas Gifford, where you look phenomenal. So I don't really feel like have we gotten a true feel of how good Mike Davis really is.
How can you gauge somebody whenever you're talking about Thomas Gifford, who probably isn't that UFC talent, and just absolutely demolishing them, and getting choked out in round two by a title contender?
Exactly.
It's impossible. We're this fight, finally now we're facing a guy, Mason James, who's a debutante, who I do think is the UFC caliber, but definitely not too big of a step up for Mike Davis
Right.
here. Mason Jones, right now, he's finished. He's had 2 first-round finishes in 2020. One of them to claim the Cage Warriors lightweight title, and then the next one to claim the Cage Warriors welterweight title. 25 years old, man. Sky's the limit right here.
Yeah.
He's 10-0. And there's a reason why that line got pushed down that much. He really does have a really fun style to watch. I think
Absolutely.
at 10-0, he doesn't rush the finish. He's methodical with his attacks. He is hittable. That's something that I did note, but he has the chin, and at the age that he's at right now, I don't see that, being his Achilles heel, his chin right now.
Right. Yeah, man, absolutely. Mason Jones is an absolute stud. This guy, I know we think he's got a black belt in jiu-jitsu and judo. And like this guy brings the fight, man. He's got good ground and pound. And one thing that he does super good is he leans on that calf kick. And we saw Sadiq Yusuf, we saw Gilbert Burns, both really tear Mike Davis's leg up there. But man, I don't want to say it's my hot take of the night, but I definitely think this is an absolute killer fight. I think it could go back and forth for a little while. I think Mike Davis is just a little bit more skilled everywhere. I think he's a bit more athletic. I think his hands are faster, more technical, and he has the wrestling ability to pull out if he wants to. I think he might take the new kid to school on Wednesday morning, man.
So Mike Davis, I think speed and power I'd give on his side. I think experience and the level of competition he's faced, I'd also give to him. Um,
Mason's just hit his stride right now.
Mason really has hit his stride, though, and it's not to knock the level of competition he's been fighting in Cage Warriors, but it's not UFC caliber. Um, I think Mason is really tough. He's a little bit reckless, and that's not something that you want to happen against a guy like Mike Davis who delivers power shots. I definitely could see Mike Davis making a pay here, and at minus 175, knowing where that line opened, and both of us having a lean on Mike Davis, I think that this will definitely be a playable piece somewhere in our equation for the fights on Wednesday.
Good, man. And I'm glad you think the same way because I like Mike Davis here. And if the public will continue to put a little money on Jones there, I consider him maybe a little, one of the more live dogs in this card. But I do like Mike Davis a lot.
Yeah, let's ride this out, see how far we can take this. I mean, if it does get into that minus 150, I mean, we're getting into straight plays at this point.
Absolutely. Opening at a minus 300, if we can get that, cut in half at a -150. I would love to play that.
How could you pass that up?
Absolutely.
Moving on, we go to the men's flyweight division with Jerome Rivera, who is 10-3, versus Francisco Figueiredo, who is 11-3. And if you think that Figueiredo sounds familiar,
Yep.
it's because he is the brother of our flyweight champion, Davison Figueiredo. Francisco, he's 11-3. I think that the record's a little bit
A
misleading.
little padded.
Yes. If you look at some of his last fights, 3 fights ago, he was fighting guys that were 6-12. He fights about once a year, so even the consistency of his fighting is a little concerning, especially considering he's past the age of 30. I'd want to see him get in those repetitions. Another really weird thing, Francisco, this is his debut into the UFC, and he decides to go into his brother's weight class. I don't really understand that. I mean, I imagine that your hopes when you come into the UFC is to one day touch gold.
Right.
So unless you plan on fighting your brother, which after watching a little bit of tape study, I don't think is a good idea. I don't understand his mindset coming into this one. And then with Jerome, he's 5'10", but he's the one who's been fighting at flyweight for the majority of his career, and he had a bad showing against Tyson in his debut. It's a pretty good knockout,
Yeah.
but he did take that fight on a week's notice, so I can't put too much stock into that performance. What are you thinking?
Yeah, man. So Rivera's been on the UFC's radar for quite some time. When you look into it, this guy has fought in LFA quite a bit. Had a couple of legal issues. Actually found out he got one fight while he was actually sitting in a jail cell, and then ended up losing it. That was the call to the UFC, and he dropped that one. Bounces back, then gets a fight against Brandon Royval, who's now in the UFC and a top contender, and just seconds into the fight, I believe, is when he gets backed up against the cage and his arm, just absolute freak injury, sets his UFC run back a little bit again, gets put on the contender series and looks really good. Dana told him to stay ready, that he'd give him either another shot or a chance in the UFC, and that came, like you said, on a week notice, where he stepped in for Matt Schnell, surprisingly. So, that fight actually later on in the card. Jerome Rivera is massive for flyweight, but he doesn't really fight like it sometimes. He kind of has tall man defense, and he definitely gets tagged with the right hand, especially by strikers who are far better than him. If he gets you to the mat, though, he's like you, man, on the mat. He's got long limbs, and he's trouble to deal with on the mat. On the other side of Figueiredo, man, there's just not a whole lot of tape to look at on him. I think he most definitely lacks some of the physical attributes his brother has that makes him good. He throws with heat like his brother does, throws a hard body kick. But his striking defense is really not that good himself. As for a flyweight and back in the bigger octagon, surprisingly, I think this one actually goes under the 2.5. I really do think Figueiredo has the power and the striking ability to land some of those hands on Jerome and put him away. And I absolutely think Jerome Rivera can get this to the mat and submit Figueiredo here. Odds relatively close, man. Jerome Rivera actually opened as a favorite, now flipped to the dog. It's a small personal play that I've already played myself. I like Jerome Rivera in this spot.
Yeah, so I think we can account the odds flipping because of Figueiredo's last name.
Right.
Something to note is that Figueiredo, he is a black belt in Muay Thai, and Jerome Rivera, he got knocked out in that Tyson Nam fight throwing a leg kick. You talked about that tall man defense. Similar problem to, I believe it was Tracy Cortez, where every single time that she throws a hard leg kick, her hands go to her waist. And that's something that Tyson Nam picked up on, and something that I wouldn't doubt Francisco could also pick up on. So, Jerome Rivera, you're 100% right. You better take this fight to the ground, because I don't think that standing up with the black belt in Muay Thai is his path to victory.
Absolutely. Who do you think you got? Gun to the head.
Gun to the head. Shoot, I'm going to say Jerome Rivera, strictly because, one, he's at least been in the UFC before.
Yeah.
He's a much bigger guy, and he's been at this weight class for longer. I could definitely see some complications on Francisco's side, maybe even similar complications to his brother in missing weight.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Moving on to the middleweight division, we have Dalcha champion Lungiambula, who is 10-2, taking on Markus Maluko Perez, who is 12-4. And just a couple weeks ago, Dalcha was a massive underdog against Carl Roberson, sitting at like a plus 220, and now it's exactly reversed in his fight here with Marcus Perez. A little bit with Dalcha though, man. This guy's got unreal knockout power. He's a black belt in judo. He's actually on the Congo national team before transitioning into MMA. This guy's got a strong double leg, and once he gets on top of you, super hard to get off, and he's got good ground and pound. Um, this is his first fight at 185 though, and he just made the weight a couple weeks ago. He was already, even a little undersized here. He was already much undersized at light heavyweight and heavyweight.
Well, I was about to say at 5'8", it was a long time coming.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's like making that cut. Just a couple weeks later at 35 years old, it does worry me a little bit. He's taking on the Joker there, Marcus Perez, who a little bit of a quick turnaround after getting knocked out just a couple months ago himself. He's on that 2-fight losing streak. I think he knows, he needs a win here. I don't like you knowing you need a win, taking a fight on short notice. A little worrisome for me. But man, Dalcha opened, like I said, at a minus 350. The public has steamed that down to a minus 135. Man, MMA betting principles alone, tell you should play that a little bit.
100%. You talked about Dalcha being the underdog against Carl Roberson. I'm not sure what happened in between that time to justify this type of line movement. I don't think Marcus Perez. I know that there were people on Dalcha as the plus 225 underdog against Carl Roberson, and now opening at the minus 350 against Marcus Perez. 500-point shift between Carl Roberson and Marcus Perez is unjustifiable in my book. You talked about how now it's at minus 135. That is so playable right now. I think Dalcha is a mini Francis Ngannou. He is pure muscle. And like you said, he has that judoka background to fall back on. And I really do like him here. It's just being the physically much more dominant guy. I think Marcus Perez, he looks for a body lock a lot of the time to cement his takedowns. And I don't think he's going to be wanting to get in that clinch scenario with Dalcha here.
Be much stronger in that area too.
Well, right. And, as long as his cardio holds up at 185 pounds, this dude, he's a physical specimen. Yeah. Some of the most explosive attacks I've ever seen. And then you look at his fight against Magomed Ankilov. That's at 205 against someone who we are extremely high off in Magomed. He goes 3 rounds with him, man, and even wobbles Ankilov with one of his overhands. He's just so fast and so explosive that you cannot take a second off. Right. He will capitalize on it. Marcus Perez, something that's working in his favor right now is I know that in preparation for this fight, he's been training with Thiago Santos. I think that's an excellent training partner for Dalcha right here.
Absolutely.
But man, after Perez's last time out against Dricus du Plessis, how can you not fade him?
We look to fade Dricus du Plessis after that.
Right. But it's like, Marcus Perez had a fighter who was so gun-shy in his debut with du Plessis, and he could not capitalize on it. It was like he just couldn't find the range. At this point, I would prefer if he dropped the whole Joker shtick and just kind of focused on MMA, took this fight as serious as possible. You're not getting in anybody's head with the painted face, right. And right now on the L2, being only 3-4 in the UFC, he's got some catching up to do, and he needs this fight. And I like the Dalcha play, especially at minus 135 or below.
So this is aligned at 1.5 rounds and not 2.5. What do you think of
that? Dang.
Not to put you on the spot.
Perez, pre-du Plessis fight, I would have loved the over in this one.
Exactly.
With the suspect, I don't know where his chin's at. He got touched right behind the ear and absolutely flatlined in this du Plessis fight. I think Dalcha could do that easily. It might be one of those ones that I stay away from and just play the Lungiambula straight. That's kind of how I'm looking at it.
I think I'm with you. I think as far as it's crept down, I think Dalcha money line straight's the way to go there.
Heck yeah. Moving on, we stay in the 125-pound division with Mudaerji, who's 13-4, versus Zarrukh Adashev, who's only 3-2. Pretty misleading, I will say. He is only 3-2, but he does have a pretty extensive kickboxing record. I think his kickboxing record is 16-3. along with some combat sambo background. Um, Man, he is one of the many victims on this fight card of Tyson Man, and he got absolute starched in that fight. Like, very
Stiffened up.
stiffened up. I mean, toes curled. It was an awful knockout. Where Mudaerji, man, I know since our last time breaking him down, he has become one of our favorite fighters to watch, and I think it's because he kind of has that like Conor McGregor-esque fight style
Wonder
to
Boy,
him.
yes.
Yeah, he's so good at going in and out of distance and timing that left hand.
Mhm.
I mean, he has this ability to kind of lull his opponents into this sense of security with his attacks, and then will pull something out that he hasn't thrown up to that point and completely catch somebody off guard. 11 of 13 wins by TKO and at 125 pounds. How could you not be excited about the 24-year-old Mudaerji?
Yeah, man. Suva's become an absolute, relic for us. We love to play this guy. Um, you got to take this man down, man. He's like Conor McGregor. He's like Wonder Boy. If you think you're gonna go in there and solely strike with this guy, you're wrong.
Hmm.
It just, I wish I could get odds like we did with Max Holloway on this
Right.
one. We cashed two big bets on him by TKO and first round in this last one against Malcolm Gordon, who has zero. He doesn't even have a chin.
No.
It's non-existent. And Sue barely even had to touch him with that
I was
left
about to
hand.
say it wasn't even as hard as shots
By
that.
now.
No.
But that left hand is an absolute piston, man. You've seen this guy fight at 135, so he has a huge presence down there at 125. He's huge. He's got great low calf kicks, and I mean, at 13-4, the blueprint's laid out. You got to take this guy down. You got to submit him. All four losses there by submission. But on the other side, man, yes, an experienced kickboxer, but I think Sue could have that record at kickboxing if you want my honest opinion. You look at his turn to MMA. Before the Tyson Am fight, this guy's fighting three guys in a row whose combined record is 3-4, a losing record. It's really that resume is trash. That being said, he is patient, but when he rushes forward, man, he throws heavy, heavy hooks at you, and he throws them in combination.
Almost trying to overwhelm his opponents.
Absolutely, man. So what he like that, and that what he needs to do here. He's got to push Sue back up against the fence, negate some of the striking distance Sue likes to keep, and in order to land his hooks because he's sitting at like a 7-inch reach disadvantage here, couple inches in height, man. Man, it's at like minus 125, I think, minus 125 for the TKO, minus 150 for Sue inside the distance. I think it's obviously going to be get done by TKO
Hmm.
at a minus 125. Really want to put a unit there.
Not very often in the 125-pound division do you see anybody with a little extra weight on him. Adashev's a little chunky.
He is, man.
I mean,
Absolutely.
I watched the tapes. He's a little chunky. And to kind of add on to that point, he missed the bantamweight weight limit in his last UFC debut by 2 pounds. What are we going to get at 125 against somebody like Sumu Darji, man? I understand why it went from minus 265 to minus 450. Everybody sees what we see, and you talked about the minus 125 TKO. It's probably something that we're going to play, even though personally it hurts to bet a
Right.
125 or inside the distance. But this is one of those scenarios where I think we could justify it.
Yeah, absolutely. With like 85, 90% of his finishes coming on the feet, as good as he's looked lately. Being a chunky bantamweight, man, I don't think the chin's gonna hold up too well dropping flyweight either. And so I like Sue by TKO, but I know we already both texted each other. He is a nice little parlay piece for us already.
Yes, sir.
In our bantamweight division, we have Ricky Simone, who's 16-3, versus Gaetano Pirrello, who is 15-5. And you don't have to wait too long for me here, man. Ricky Simone is actually the person that I parlayed Sue with there. I got it, I believe, at a minus 160. Not too often do I like to lay the chalk on the whole minus 160, man, but I think these two guys should most definitely win on Saturday. So I've laid a couple units on that one. Ricky Simone, man, he's without a doubt, hands down, fought the better competition. He's been in camp. This guy's ready to go. He's got great wrestling, great cardio, and got a little pop on his shots too, man. But what I like really about Ricky Simone is this guy's got, really good speed, especially on his takedowns. He can shoot them very fast and from the outside. Um, just he gets a little wild on the feet sometimes, and that was evident in the Faber fight. He pushed him up against the fence, and he basically ran into that right hand himself. But on the Pirrello side, man, he's stepping in for Brian Kelleher there on a 2-fight win streak. Opponent side, really not that not that impressive. But man, this guy, he's no slouch on the feet. He throws heated stuff as well, but his takedown defense is probably his biggest knock, and he's taking on a good wrestler here, Ricky Simone.
Yeah, so you talked about Ricky Simone. He is the much more established fighter here. You've got Ricky who had a decision win on the Contender Series and didn't get signed, and then went to LFA, fought a couple of times, and then made his debut against Murad Devashvili. One of the toughest debut opponents you could
And
possibly
one of
ask
the
for,
weirdest fights I've ever seen in my life.
and he gets the dub.
Did you see the end of that one?
I know he guillotined.
That's the one where Murad is just literally on his bike, literally just making his legs move, trying to keep himself conscious. And at the very end, the bell rings, they pull Ricky off, and he's just laying there unconscious with his legs still kicking.
Oh,
And they
shoot.
called it a TKO after the fight had ended.
No,
So
I did not get to see
Murad
that.
was going to get the decision win, but they called it after that because it was the craziest circumstance I've ever seen.
Wow. So I mean, okay, so to pull one out in
Yeah.
your debut against
Absolutely.
Murad, but man, how can you look past the Uriah Faber loss? How and then he goes and fights another, pure striker in Rob Font, who's a little bit taller than him. We see this in the Pirrello right now. He gets touched up against Rob Font. You talked about Simone having some pop on his shots. He rocked Rob Font a couple of times in that fight, but he lost to a striker back to back. So now we have another striker, neither of which I think are on the well. I think that Rob Font is levels above Pirrello. Pirrello and Uriah Faber might be a fight to make. I mean, Pirrello though, insane clinch work. I mean, his Muay Thai, it's out of this world. He's a WKN Pro-Am world and European champion. Like, he's definitely no slouch on the feet. And every single one of his shots he's throwing with bad intentions. So I know that he is the plus 320, but it does kind of scare me a little bit with just how powerful Pirrello is and how we've seen Simone kind of be a little suspect as far as his chin holding up to two power punchers. So, I couldn't agree more. Simone has all the tools to win this one. I think it should be relatively easy, but man, it's tough banking on chinny fighters, and when he's fighting another guy with this type of Muay Thai experience, it's one of those things where, yeah, he should get it done, but I can point to at least two instances where he should have gotten it done, but he was just outclassed on the feet.
So now that you bring that up, for me, something I might look at doing since I've got that parlay locked in is sitting at a 3-1 dog, being such a good striker. I might look at hedging that parlay, very small bet on Pirrello inside the distance or by TKO because I'm very high in Sue. I think that one's going to win. I definitely think Ricky Simone has all the tools to get this done, but man, that's not a bad hedge there by no means.
I don't think so at all. And no telling what kind of odds we could get if he's sitting at a plus 320 money line. I'm sure the TKO
600,
yeah, we're
700
getting
probably.
up in there. So I mean, shoot, we might even see it on the podcast. It's playable odds. I guarantee it. It's playable odds. So definitely something to look at. Now, I will note that Pirrello, the only time that he's really stepped up was when he fought Arnold Allen in Cage Warriors and kind of got walked through.
Yeah.
So that's kind of another thing that makes me feel a little bit better with this Simone parlay that we've already locked in.
Absolutely, man. Yeah. I think Simone's got all the tools, especially in the wrestling department. He'll probably grind this one out with a decision win or just ride.
I agree. Moving on to the prelim main event, we have Omari the Wolverine Akhmedov, who is 25-1, versus Tom Breese, who is 12-2. So, Omari Akhmedov, he is a former welterweight in the UFC where he went 5-3 and has since moved to middleweight where he's found some success going 3-1-1. He is coming off a loss to Chris Weidman, which we actually cashed in on. We had picked Chris Weidman. But looking back on it, Omari, his record and the people that he's beaten, it's impressive, man. In the 14 fights that he's had in the UFC, he has gone to a draw with Marvin Vettori. He's beaten Ian Heinisch. He's beaten Al Hassan. He's beaten Zach Cummings, Tim Boach.
Yeah.
They're legitimate wins, and you can't look past that. He's got a wrestling style.
Mhm.
He throws some like long looping punches to kind of set up those shots, but um, realistically, kind of has like some lower level entries into his shots and kind of gives it away before it happens. Tom Breeze, that's somebody who I think is going to be able to capitalize on that style. He throws his jab from his hips and his hands are already low. I think one, he does that because he's fast enough to get away with it, but he also can have his hands already down where they need to be to stuff any takedown, which would be his Achilles heel.
Yeah.
And we saw that in the Brendan Allen fight where he got cut through like butter in that
Yeah, man.
fight.
Yeah, man. So first time we broke this down, I won't say I jumped the gun, but I did a little bit, man. And I took that Breeze opening line. I got it at a minus like 145. It's at a minus 165 now. So I did my job, but I broke down the fight a second time and not as confident as I was the first time going around. Omari, yes, man, it was a super super sloppy fight with Chris Weidman, and guy's biggest knock is the gas tank. It fades super quick. Um, and he almost did get, in 2020, he did almost get that rematch with Marvin Vettori. He did have to pull there. This guy, what he likes to do, man, he likes to put you up against the fence, make it a real dirty, kind of grindy fight, work the body with it. He's not really an exciting fighter, man. On the other side, you talked about Omari, used to be a welterweight. So did Tom Breeze, man. I don't know how either one of these guys used to make 170, especially Tom Breeze sitting at 6'3",
I was
man.
about to say that frame is
It is,
ridiculous.
man. It was like James Vick trying to make lightweight.
Mhm.
He is coming off his round one win over KB Buller.
Power jab.
Power jab, man. But KB Buller, man, he is not UFC material. He did not look good. It was his debut. He definitely looked like it. He shelled up bad in that fight, and I think that could be why we're getting such a little slight favoritism there on Tom Breeze. Is because he looked so good in that last time. Tom Breeze needs to look to use, some stuff up the middle, some knees and stuff up the middle to catch Omari on some of those shots. But at the same time, Omari might be able to capitalize on some of those takedowns with attacks like that. So it made me second guess this fight a whole lot. People shit on Omari, yes, for that cardio, but we've not really seen Tom Breeze, that cardio tested. The guy's not been to a round two since 2016. Granted, he took some time off with some injuries, and he's open about some of the mental stuff he has to fight, along with the fight game and stuff himself. One prop I really that stood out to me though is Tom Breeze by a third round finish, and that's because Omari has lost three of his five losses either in the last couple seconds of the second round or by third round, and it's sitting at over a plus 1,000 right now. Um, Maybe looking at trying to find some way to hedge my Tom Breeze bet to just kind of walk away even on that. I'm just not as confident as I was when I did the second tape study on this one.
So I'm just going to add fuel to the fire. One thing about Tom Breeze is he's an Englishman, and if we know anything about Englishmen,
They can't wrestle.
they cannot wrestle. And then to add on top of that, nobody that Tom Breeze has beaten um, is worth mentioning in my opinion.
No,
You
it's
got an older Daniel Kelly, KB, who we just had said isn't UFC caliber. He lost the two in between that, with Brendan Allen and Sean Strickland.
he gave up in the Brennan Allen fight to me. Straight up gave up. I think
Yeah,
once it hit the mat and he realized he had nothing for him, he gave up.
I think Brendan Allen's the last guy that you want to fight at 185 with his frame. If you're
Yeah,
coming up to from 170 to 185, Brendan Allen isn't the dude.
absolutely.
But nothing about Tom Breeze's past wins make me think that this is easily his biggest test to date. That's kind of what I'm getting
Mm-hmm.
at, and that's something else that kind of bothers me. I think in his last showing against KB Bueller, we could be putting a little too much stock on that. But
I'm with you, man. I do think I'm going to lean toward Tom Breeze, like officially, but I'm less confident every time I look at
yeah, so both of us we're pretty similar whenever we make our picks. I also laid a little bit on Tom Breeze. He's in a parlay, and I think he's one of the last pieces to it. But it's a parlay that I'm not super confident in at this point either. Depending on how the line moves, Omari, he might come into a playable range. Do you know what he opened at?
Open at a plus 120. Now sitting at like a plus 105 or
So
something.
depending on where the money comes in, Omari might get above that plus 150 into a playable range. But as of right now, I think for the podcast, we'll probably lay off of it.
Yeah,
Unless we see something at weigh-ins or something that would really make us want to jump on it.
I'm with you, man. To kick off our main card, man, we have the Miracle and Lerone Murphy, who's 9-0-1, fighting Douglas De Silva De Andrade, something like that, a mouthful there. He was 26-3, man, a veteran of the sport. And currently, man, Lerone is sitting at a minus 300 favorite. Um, odds maker's pretty confident on him, and for me, I like Murphy a whole lot in this spot. He is flying out to Fight Island here for his second time out, so that's something to notice is that he's already fought in Abu Dhabi twice. Before this, the Zubaira and Ricardo Ramos both in Abu Dhabi, so this is his third trip out there. It's something he's used to making the long flight. There's nothing new for him, and when I think this guy squares off with Andrade come weigh-ins, I think he's going to look a whole lot bigger. Just a whole lot better in shape, I guess you could say, because I think the fight miles have really caught up to Andrade on the other side. Just to touch on the road, this guy's got, heavy hands. He's an Englishman. The wrestling's starting to get a little bit better, though, as he got taken down a bunch, kind of got stuck on the bottom against Zubaira, but then in his next fight, came out and showed, he can initiate some of those takedowns and stuff against a legit black belt and Ricardo Ramos there. Andrade, he also debuted against Zubaira, but not as a plus 250 dog like Murphy, but at pick 'em odds because dude was 22-0 entering the time. Since then, taking on cream of the crop of the bantamweight division, if you want to be honest with you, with Font and Marlon Vera and Peter Yan. But man, that last fight at 145 against Henry Morale, a lot of question marks there for me. I think that age and stuff's really starting to catch up with him.
Really suspect to go into a fight with Henry Morale and be on your back as much as he was.
Right.
One thing to notice, not very often do we see Brazilians who have 26 wins and only one of them by submission.
Yeah.
Like that right there, that stood out to me more than anything is, we've got a ball of muscle in Douglas Andrade where he lunges with his shots, he throws from the hips, he's throwing with 100% power and looking for that KO. And in 19 of his 26 wins, he's found it.
Right.
You talked about the age starting to catch up with him. He's 35 years old. Yeah. But along with that age, he has about triple the experience that Murphy does in this spot. So that is something else you have to take into consideration. I know this is he is a former bantamweight. So you talked about how here at 145, he's probably going to look much smaller than Lerone Murphy. Not to mention, having a height disadvantage to Murphy as well. Not to mention he started his career fighting at 170 pounds. Something I definitely think that Murphy's going to be looking to utilize in this fight is his low leg kicks. Yeah. That's something he's really shown to be one of his better tools in his arsenal. I think Murphy also, just as far as being a technical striker, has the advantage over Andrade here. He utilizes feints really, really well to kind of open up the shots, and I do see Murphy kind of taking this over.
Yeah, man, I'm with you. I like Murphy just about everywhere here. You touched on that low calf kick, and I think he just needs to fire kicks anywhere at this point on the smaller Andrade to keep him back, and if he wants to get the wrestling going, I think he has that too. A couple spots I like, man. I've already parlayed Murphy. The under 2.5 there is at minus 125, so definitely playable as well if we think Murphy's going to get this done. But man, Murphy by TKO is plus money. It's plus 125, and inside the distance is only minus 110. So if we definitely think Murphy's going to get it done inside the distance at minus 110, covers you both ways. I think that's a spot I'd really like to play.
Yeah, definitely something we'll have to look into. It's nothing I've touched on just yet, but I do think Murphy's going to get it done inside the distance, so that's probably a playable prop.
Absolutely.
Moving on, we go to the men's flyweight division with Tyson Nam, who is 20-11-1, versus Matt Danger Schnell, who is 14-5. So this fight, it's been canceled 2 times prior to this, but both times because of Schnell, it did not come together.
Right.
I know Schnell has had weight cutting issues, which is a big turnoff for both of us whenever we look at fighters to bet on. Tyson Nam, man, in his last 2 fights in the UFC, he's looked similar to like Buckley. He kind of has that, hey, you're getting knocked out when you're in the octagon with him, and just hasn't met much resistance in the UFC yet. Schnell, he 9 of his 14 wins are by submission. There's really no denying what his game plan is coming into this one, and did put together a decent little streak, a 4-fight win streak before meeting Alexander Pantoja and getting starched, absolutely destroyed. And that's something that you have to note in Schnell's career right now, is that he's a little chinny right now. It's definitely suspect, and his fight style doesn't help him any. I mean, he's got this type of style where he'll happily join a firefight with you, even though that's
out of the game plan.
Yeah, out of the game plan. Definitely not his biggest path to victory, and that might be because he has a black belt in karate. It makes him think that he has the stand up to match some of the people he's been going up against. But man, Matt Schnell, if I were you, I'd stick to the grappling. Tyson Nam, on the other hand, never been submitted.
All right.
That's something you got to take into consideration here. He's very patient with his shots, which has kind of gotten him in trouble in the past. 8 of his 11 losses are by decision, and I think that we can credit that to him almost looking for that perfect shot or searching for the KO.
Yeah, man, I'm right there with you. Perfect breakdown on both of these guys. This is the 3rd time scheduling these guys, with Schnell, like you said, pulling out twice. Man, Tyson Nam was glad to collect that paycheck against Adashev and Jerome Rivera, and we've already touched on, like you said, both those fighters in this fight card that are fighting on Wednesday, and both those KOs, man, came off of countering the kick, so it's something I, really look for Matt Schnell to try to avoid here, because Tyson Nam has looked really good as of late, man, and Tyson Nam is a guy he's hard for me to not like. He is the definition of hard work. This guy did not get his UFC call until 35 years old after 28 professional fights. He's been on the regional scene since 2006 fighting guys, and he's had, just rough patches throughout his career, but has won 8 of his last 11. And the 3 guys that have beat him there, are in the UFC, or Sergey Perez, who's looked good in Bellator, man, so he did start off 0-2 there with Sergio Pettis and Kai Car France, but those are some big names, There's some established flyweights in the UFC. Tyson Nam, you touch on the decisions, man. He's a power puncher for flyweight, and he's a low volume. He looks to land that kill shot, and it has got him in trouble over the judges' scorecards. Schnell, man, fighting out of American Top Team, which is a good gym you like to see. But, man, that 4-fight win streak, it did not prep you for what you had coming in Pantoja. None of those guys were on the skill level, and it was very evident. Matt Schnell did not belong into the octagon with Pantoja on that night. Matt Schnell and Tyson Nam. Tyson Nam has finished over 60% of his wins by KO, and Matt Schnell in 19 fights has only seen the scorecards 4 times. I like the under 2.5 here for another set of flyweights. Statistically, both these guys do have a lot of finishes. Tyson Nam never being submitted, I don't think he's faced a grappler with the skill set and will match him a little bit bigger the way Schnell has. And his chin issues as he has had, and as bad as he looks on the feet compared to someone like Tyson Nam, I think Tyson Nam easily can pull off a counter and put Schnell away here with the chin issues. Both these guys, I see a really clear path to victory. I'm going to lean toward Tyson Nam in this one, but I really do like the under 2.5 here. I think it's at like a -125 or something.
So, Matt Schnell, one of the things that I saw in his tape study is that he will pull guard. And that's something that I wouldn't just I wouldn't count out in this fight either. Tyson Nam, 37 years old. Yeah. Does that not bother you at 125?
It does. But he's shown to still be able to compete, I think. In Jerome Rivera and Adashev, yes, they're low competition. But the guy's still going out there and the ability to perform to get first-round KOs. And maybe at a higher level flyweight, maybe even Matt Schnell, if he had not had all the KO losses, wouldn't be on Tyson Nam so much. But like I said, I just see a clear path away that Tyson M can easily get this done, and it's really by landing one good right hand.
And one other thing to note on the Nam side is this will be his first time in the UFC having a full camp for his opponent. So realistically, we don't know what Tyson Nam we're about to see, and I'm with you with the chinniness of Matt Schnell. It's kind of fun banking on somebody like Nam, and if we do have to play like the Nam TKO prop or something as opposed to the straight bet, then I don't mind it.
Absolutely, man. I'm with you. Staying in the flyweight division here, but with some females, we have Roxanne Modafferi, who's 25-17, taking on Viviane Araujo, who's 9-2. Man, Roxy is an absolute pioneer of women's MMA. This girl has got 40-something fights there, and she has been around, paved the way for so many girls, been a pro since 2013. Man, y'all know how I feel about Roxy. This is a girl that I just can never get on the right side of her. When I bet her, she loses. When I fade her, Macy Barber tears her ACL and she rides her out on top the entire time. I really can never get on the right side of her. Since 2017, man, she's alternated wins and losses. Superstition says she's due a loss here. But at plus 300, man, god dang, it almost makes me want to play her. This girl has a negative strike differential. She's super slow on the feet. Her jab that she pumps out, it's really, really slow. And then I guess at 38, she finally started adding strength and conditioning to her, her camps, but wasn't evident to me in her last fight. One thing I like about Roxy, though, is she fights at a Syndicate MMA. And that's a great camp for girls.
Mm-hmm.
I touch on it not being so much for guys, but for girls, it's a really good camp. She has a ton of looks there, and Joanne Calderwood fights on, the main card next weekend, a good girl that she's probably in training camp a lot with right now. Another girl who's great in Muay Thai, another girl's a great striker, could probably help her preparing for Araujo here. That being said, man, Roxy has had a complete disadvantage when it comes to athleticism here. The athleticism gap is one of the more, relatively wide ones we're going to see. Araujo, she started off the USA with a bang, man. You don't really see girls put other girls away with right hands the way she does. She's now 3-1 in the UFC with the lone loss coming to Jessica Eye, who missed weight by 5 pounds or something that night. I think she's going to just rely on being a little bit more athletic to get it done against Roxy. She's just really got to worry about Roxy getting in on the legs and taking her down.
Yeah, so, you talked about Roxy being hard to call her fights. I compared her to Sam Alvey. She wins when she's not supposed to and loses when she should win, and it's just a tough fight to call any fighter that she's up against. I do think that I saw some minor improvements in her Andrea Lee fight. You're right, she is unathletic and she is kind of slow, but from what I could tell, they were coming a little bit faster and they were a whole lot straighter than I've seen Roxy fight before. So those are some takeaways. And then to kind of add fuel to the fire as far as how Roxy could win this, Roxy, she started her career at bantamweight, so she's going to be the physically bigger person, where Araujo is an extra weight. And as far as, what Roxy has to do to beat Araujo, it's take her down, do the lay and pray. Yep. And, Roxy's the decision queen with over 15 wins by decision. Yeah. I mean, when do you hear that, especially in women's MMA? So, yeah, I think Araujo should win. She's way more athletic. She's able to use her feints and her striking to really set up her shots. She relies more on her quickness and footwork rather than like head movement when she's striking. But she's done pretty good up until this point with the physical attributes that she has. It's not like she's significantly younger than Roxy.
Absolutely.
And at 34 years old and having, what are we looking at? 4 times less experience than Roxy. Man, there are some tricky situations that she could be put in, and Roxy just had the experience level to take over. This is one that I am completely staying away from. Roxy at plus 295, I can't imagine getting much more value, but if you're playing Roxy, play her by decision.
Yeah, man, it feels like a massive trap set up for me, giving Roxy those odds. It is screaming for me to play it and play it and play it. But at the present moment, I think I'm going to agree with you, man, that we should just lay off this one.
I agree. Moving on, we go to the light heavyweight division with Hurricane Ike Villanueva, who is 16-11, versus Vinicius Moreira, who is 9-4. Vinicius Moreira, man. 0-3 in the UFC since his win over John Allen in the Contender Series. It took me a collective 5 minutes to watch all 3 of his UFC fights.
Right.
My dude's getting finished in the first round every single fight. And against people that that shouldn't be just demolishing you like they have been. Alonzo Menifield, he could knock out anybody. I'll give you a pass. Eric Anders is where I draw the line.
Especially at light heavyweight Eric Anders.
100%.
Good.
It's something that you have to take note of. And then Paul Craig, I'm pretty sure Vinicius, he like tried to pull guard or in some way got it to the ground, and Paul Craig out-grappled him.
Yeah.
And it's like Vinicius's only path to victory is to grapple. So I don't know. He has not impressed me in the slightest. The one thing to note is that he has 100% finish rate, and by the looks of it, 3 of his 4 losses are being finished. So I don't see this fight seeing the judges at all, and that's only judging on the Vinicius side. We move over to Ike Villanueva. 13 of his 16 wins are by KO.
Yeah.
He's fluctuated from 185 to 265 his whole career. Kind of doesn't have the best body for the UFC. I hate to just dog on him, but he's gotten beat by the lower level of 185ers in Jordan Wright and the lower level of the 265ers in Chase Sherman. So let's hope he doesn't go for the three-peat and go for the lower level of the 205ers in Vinicius. I think I lean towards Villanueva, but it's a tough fight.
Yeah, man. Why is this on the main card? That's the real question.
Just big boys? Is that what they're thinking?
Why does this not kick us off at 8 a.m. on Wednesday like it should? Ike trains out of Extreme Couture a little bit in Vegas, but it does look like he's done a lot of it back home with 4 Ounce Fight Club. What I didn't know from that, what you got from the interview, a boy's working a full-time job. That's why he's back home. Something you don't really like to see, for a guy going into his UFC fight. He's on a 2-fight losing streak to Chase Sherman, Chase Sherman looked great that night. I can't say otherwise. But Jordan Wright, it was a doctor stoppage. He caught a nasty knee up the middle, split him open. And then Vinicius, you touched on him, man. He's absolutely fighting for his job too. Not sure why he hadn't been cut. Easy path to victory for both these guys, man. Ike can without a doubt put him away with one of his hands. He's got good leg kicks to open up the hands as well. And if there's a guy that Vinicius can get down to the ground and submit in the UFC, it is Ike Villanueva. This fight is aligned at under 1.5 at even money, but doesn't go the distance. It's minus 280. So it just doesn't really make sense to me, Al. You give me half the fight at even money, and the other half you're expecting these big boys to get a late finish when neither one of them, in 40 fights, they've been over 1.5 rounds one time combined.
Oh my God.
So it's at even money, under 1.5. That's a play that, especially if I can keep that around the even money line, that I will probably be playing. Because both these guys, Ike at 36, dude at 31 who's got his chin touched up from hell recently, both these guys can be knocked out. Both of them can implement their game plan so well. I don't see the fight lasting long, and that's why it's on the main card.
So the under 1.5 is kind of what we're looking at for this fight.
Absolutely.
I don't mind it at all. One other thing, I did write it down. The Paul Craig fight with Vinicius, he pulled guard. Yeah. That's what happened. Yeah. So, Vinicius will do anything he can to get the fight to the ground, and he lacks the power, the strength to do it. I think in both the Anders and the Minifield fight, it was like he shot for the takedown, but was just overpowered both times.
That's but real good athletes, though.
Fair enough. But realistically, Vinicius, the moment he's been touched in the UFC, his chin has faulted, and so I cannot bank on him at all. I think the under 1.5 is an excellent read and something where, the odds, they just don't match up. So for us to be getting almost even money on the 1.5 under, I think we have to play it.
I think we have to as well. History of both of these guys to have this at under 1.5 at even money, it doesn't line up, and that's something we should look at playing. Our co-main event of the evening is Warley Alves, who's 13-4, taking on Munir, the sniper Lazez, who's 10-1. This fight opened as a pick'em, man, and as soon as that hit MMA Twitter, man, everybody was all over it at a minus 225. I want to start by saying I'm not that confident anymore on Lazzez. Not minus 225 confident. How about that? And something I definitely would not play at this range. I did happen to get it at minus 135 myself. And I think the value is there at 135, enough to play it for me. Lazzez is a very, very technical guy on the feet, and he came in and made that UFC debut over Al Hassan, who a lot of people just don't want to fight, period. You can have your light shut off in 1 second with him, and man, he was able to back up against the fence, keep his hands up, and eat some of those shots, and kind of just let Al Hassan wear himself out. And then Lazzez just started picking this guy apart, man, from distance, throwing step-in elbows. He's got a very smooth right hand, and he throws great shots up the middle, like Dan Hooker. He's got a great knee up the middle. And one combo that I touched on was his body hook, followed by a head kick, man. What I see from Lazzez on the feet, I really, really like, but he's fought a wrestler who's laid out the blueprint of how to put this guy on the back and, take some of the striking away. Alves hasn't really lived up to the hype there after submitting Colby Covington. Was originally matched up against Christian Aguilera, and I had a big play on Orly Alves there. I mean, this guy is, on the feet. He's got just as many weapons as Lazzez, man, to make this fight dangerous, and he's, I wouldn't say, looking at it, he doesn't look as much more experienced, but when you look at the kickboxing background and stuff, Worley's been doing this a long time.
So, Worley Alves, I think that his biggest tool are his leg kicks, where Lazzez, his biggest tool is his head kicks. I think that's where we see the fight. That's where we see them both try and attack right off the bat. I think Lazzez is going to come and test that chin of Alves, and really throw some hard shots to see if Alves can get his hands up quick enough to block it. Where Alves is going to try and establish that low calf kick. I know that he wants to get that early and probably look to slow down the movement of Lazzez. You touched on Lazzez's knees up the middle. That's something that James Krause was able to capitalize on in his fight with Alves, and what he actually caught him with to start off the combination that ended up finishing Alves. So I would be surprised if Munir hasn't noticed that in his tape study of Alves, and I imagine that he's going to be looking to implement that. So, Alves, I think he is the shorter guy here, but he's the one who used to fight at middleweight. So I do think that he has a good build for this division. A lot of people are putting a lot of
stock and hype into him.
Yeah, a lot of stock and a lot of hype off of a fight in Al Hassan, who we've seen recently just not play out. I forget who we were just talking about that beat Al Hassan, but we know that Chaos Williams,
Omari.
Omari Akhmedov. Those are two people who.
And you missed weight too. Al Hassan did that fight, so you knew he was going to fade.
Yeah, 100%. There were a lot of things that it's fun to be a fan of Al Hassan, but really, how good is he technically? And I'm not trying to take away Munir's debut, because one thing that I did notice is how composed he was under that firefight. It kind of reminded me of that Kevin Holland Joaquin Buckley fight, where man, you got to endure a tough 2 minutes and 30 seconds with somebody like Al Hassan, and he was able to do it. So big props to him. I do want to note that Lazzez, even though kicking is his main go-to, he did show some fight IQ in that Al Hassan fight by taking it to the ground in that second and third round. I think that a lot of people are putting a lot of stock on somebody who just debuted versus Worley Alves, who's shown that he belongs in the 170-pound division, submitted the GOAT, Colby Covington. Even in this Randy Brown fight in his last time out, he lost, but he had Randy Brown's back and was about to choke him unconscious in that first round. I think Alves is the much more proved guy. And for the heck of it, this is going to be the fight that me and you don't agree on. I think we agree on just about every fight, and I do kind of lean towards Munir. But I think the odds at minus 115 where they open were about where they should be right now.
And definitely at the minus 225, that's way too wide, in my opinion. A lot of stock being put into this guy. He just has some of the tools that if he can keep this at range, probably take it to decision. But, man, I think if Alves can get this to the mat, if he can get it close some of the distance and even clinch up at all, I think he'll see that he's the far superior grappler of the two, and probably a lot stronger as well.
I agree. All right, now in our main event, we go to the welterweight division where we see Michael the Maverick Chiesa, who is 16-4, face Neil the Haitian sensation Magny, who is 24-7. You know, I will be the first to say that Chiesa is not my favorite fighter. From his personality to his fight style, nothing about him appeals to me whatsoever. But I do have to give credit where credit's due. He has put together a nice little 3-fight win streak in 170. Not to tear it up too much, but it was a over-the-hill Condit, a way over-the-hill Diego Sanchez, and RDA, who is
already back down to 55.
A true 155er. Yeah. Michael Chiesa, you know, there's no denying what he wants to do with his game plan. He's looking to get it to the ground, almost desperate with his takedown attempts. If he starts getting touched up, I think he's one of those guys that doesn't like getting hit.
Yeah.
And we've seen it in quite a few of his fights. I've kind of compared him at this point to Marcin Tybura, where he doesn't care if he has a fun fight anymore. He's doing what he has to do to get the decision. And if that means wrestle fucking you to victory, that's what he's going to do. Neil Magny, man, I like that Michael Chiesa is finally having to face somebody who is physically bigger than him.
Yeah.
At 6'1", he's always been the physically dominant person in his UFC matchups. And so now, you know, he finally, it's not a super strong guy, but it's somebody who has 5 inches of reach on him.
It gives him something much different to think about.
Oh my gosh. I mean, as far as Neil Magny as a fighter, one of the most awkward styles to prepare for you could think of.
Yeah, man. He's put together himself a nice little 3-fight winning streak against, you know, Li Jingliang, who, you know, that win holds a little bit even more weight now after seeing his performance. The Rocco Martin, who we've seen beat Ameev. And then what he did to Robbie Lawler was just, I mean, that was flat-out domination for 15 minutes. Robbie Lawler did not have a moment in that fight that he, you know, had success. And part of that is because he trains at a Team Elevation, man. And it's like Max Holloway, Tony Ferguson type of pace. It's a weapon for these guys, you know? Like, it's not just something, oh, yeah, he's got good cardio. No, like, he uses that as a weapon to really wear on guys and to zap that cardio when he takes them into deep waters. Chiesa, that move to welterweight was long overdue. Really open about how bad that weight cut to 155 was. But you touched on it, man. When I look at who he's beaten at welterweight, it doesn't give me a true look at Michael Chiesa. He's not beaten top competition by no means. A win for either one of these guys does give him a pretty nice fight at welterweight. Just to touch on, you know, I think some of the strengths that both these guys have outside of Neil Magny's cardio and reach that he has, he's got good ground and pound himself, and he's real tricky on the mat. I don't know if Chiesa's going to go out here and just dominate him on the mat the way he has his previous 3 opponents. And then Neil Magny's biggest weakness for him is, I mean, you got to look at the RDA fight, the only, you know, real similar fight they had, and RDA went out there and chopped his legs down. That's something Chiesa needs to look to do. But Chiesa didn't check one single leg kick from RDA himself. So I noticed that, as you know, being a typical wrestler himself, he's heavy on that lead leg. And you're right, brother, he does not like to get hit. If Anthony Pettis can just put you down like that and stuff, you're right, man. The more I look at it, I agree with the odds makers, man. I think the odds are aligned perfectly. I think Neil is a slight favorite here, the minus 140 range. I like to bet on him here. We hadn't seen Chiesa go 5 rounds, man, and with the commentating and being on the sideline for a little bit, I don't think he can keep the pace up with Neil Magny.
Yeah, so again, I find myself having to play devil's advocate just a little bit. Michael Chiesa, he kind of comes off to me as one of the people who made his way into the top 10 of the 170-pound division and has been just picking and choosing his fights.
Leon Edwards.
Yes, Leon Edwards. He is the guy that hasn't really, you know, at the time, sure, he deserved that top 10 ranking, but as time has moved on, it really hasn't justified any of his wins. This is one guy in the top 10 of the welterweight division that I think that he could beat, and that's because there is a clear path to victory. But you give Michael Chiesa any other dude at 170 in the top 10, and he's getting his ass whooped, in my opinion.
I think Robbie Lawler would whoop up on Michael Chiesa.
I think that would be an excellent fight. I really do.
You brought up a good point for me, though, and as we watch this fight, I don't I would be chewing my fingernails off watching this fight with the play on Neil Magny because it's so hard to watch a guy who's got to defend a takedown for 25 minutes versus, the guy who's just got to get a couple of them to get his game plan going.
If it's up to me, I'll take grappler over striker any day, especially when it comes to betting. In this case, though, I will be fading Michael Chiesa till the day I die, and think Neil Magny right now at -140. If it keeps going in our favor, it's getting into playable money line range.
Yeah, I've seen it. It's opened up at a -150, since been brought down a little bit. The public's in on Chiesa a little bit, man, and if we can get that brought down a little bit more, I definitely like that as well.
Can Neil Magny stop the takedown? That's all you need to ask yourself about this fight. And I think for that price tag, I'm willing to gamble.
And if you want my honest opinion on that, I think Chiesa takes the first 2 rounds of this fight, and I think we see Neil Magny win the last 3. I think some of those grappling exchanges with the time off is Chiesa's cardio is not going to hold up over the full 5 rounds, and it's definitely not going to be able to keep up with the pace that Neil Magny will have to offer.
I don't mind that take at all. Yeah. To finish off the night, do you have a fight of the night?
Yeah, man. I don't even have to think twice about this one for me, man. The fight of the night is Mike Davis and Mason Jones. I think the new boy gets schooled, but he's a dog himself, man. He's not going to go out easy, I don't think. I think both those guys are gonna show up and bring it Wednesday morning.
I like it. My fight to watch is Dalcha Lungiambula versus Markus Perez. Yeah. I'm really, really looking forward to see Dalcha at 185. And Markus Perez's chin being as questionable as it is, I think we could see just a highlight reel knockout there. So that's my fight to watch right there.
For sure, man. I'll go ahead and ask you, what about your fighter to watch?
Fighter to watch, it's got to be Mudaerji. Yeah. I know you would probably pick this as your fighter to watch too.
That's our dude right now.
Yeah, I mean, Mudaerji, he's one of the hottest prospects to me right now. I could watch that dude fight all day.
Absolutely, man. If I had to pick one, I think I'm going to lean with the guy who opens this up on the main card in Lerone Murphy, man. I think the dude's a stud. He got 2 hard matchups right off the bat, man, and has looked decent. I think he'll clean up that takedown defense, and I don't want to say a layup, but the UFC gave him a guy that I think he's supposed to go out here and really beat.
I like it. We're hoping to turn it around in 2021 and wind up in the positive after this event. I think we got some good reads on this card.
Man, I think we have some really good reads on this. It is nice when we agree on majority of the card. But -3 units, not the biggest hole to climb out of. Definitely something manageable to get back. And I'm glad there was fights on Wednesday for us to get right back in and a chance to make some of those units back.
How can you complain on a Wednesday night getting a full UFC lineup?
Absolutely. And man, after Wednesday, you guys will get you a podcast on our boy Conor McGregor. We got Dustin Poirier and Conor for UFC 257 next, so keep an eye out for that. Keep an eye out for our bets later on this week that we're going to be released for you. Anything else you want to
add? Just a heads up, we are biased as could be on Conor McGregor, so just be prepared.
That might be a 5-unit max right there.
Yes, sir.
But you guys have a good week, man. Make sure to follow us on Twitter, on all the social medias, and keep an eye on Bet MMA where we're going to release some of those picks.
Have a good one.